So welcome to our Sunday Sangha, and it's really nice to see your faces and your names. Thank you for being here. And let's just take a couple moments as folks are still joining in, just to center in the body before we begin our chanting. So an encouragement, just to sense where your body is touching the ground, is touching the earth. Whether you're sitting or standing, lying down or walking. And if it's difficult to feel one's body, you might notice sound in the space around you. And it might be helpful just to open the mind with a question. How is it now? Gentle, kind, loving question. How is it now? Or what's happening now? And just notice how it is for the mind to move from possibly not being present, possibly not being with how it is now. And that movement of the mind to first notice how it is and then to receive how it is. Receiving sensation, breath, sound, maybe mood, whatever's here. And then we can bring our hands together and bow. And in a few moments, we'll have time for a longer sitting. This opportunity just to center as folks are joining in. And thank you, Carolyn. I just saw your message. So we're going to go into some chanting now. And I'll put the chanting booklet into the chat. Let me just reopen the chat. There we are. So if you don't have the chanting booklet, you might bring it up, but I will also share my screen. And we're going to begin with a mantra on page 3, top of page 3, honoring the Buddha, Namo Tassa. And we'll use this Sri Lankan melody for those of you who know it, chanting 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So honoring the awakened one, also honoring and maybe sensing into our own ability to be awake, to be aware in this moment, to receive our experience in the knowing heart. And then let's chant at the top of page 4. So again, an ancient chant, chanted in all Buddhist traditions, this recollection of the Triple Jewel, recounting, recalling the qualities of the Buddha, of the Dhamma, and of the Sangha. So beginning top of page 4. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta devamanusanam buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhi Tisupatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sango Ujupatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sango Nayapatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sango Samichipatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sango Yadidang Chatari Purisa Yugani Yata Purisa Pukala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sango Ahunayo Pahunayo Dakinayo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang punya ketang loka sati. So as we sense the vibration of these ancient sounds in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts, I want to touch on the qualities of the Dhamma before we go into our sitting. So today I want to talk about the everyday practice of trust, or even the word faith, which shows up in the Dhamma in a number of different ways. And this practice of trust or faith, which I use the word trust, I'm using these interchangeably because for many the word faith can be quite loaded. And but I think it's useful to actually investigate our relationship to this word faith. So today, looking at this practice, this everyday practice of trust, of noticing where the mind and the heart go for comfort and protection, and then noticing what is a reliable place to put our awareness, to be mindful, to align with. And so the Buddha spoke about the qualities of the Dharma. Dharma with a capital D, the teachings of the Buddha, but also Dharma or Dhamma as in what is arising now, what is arising in the present moment experience, and the particular qualities of Dhamma. And so these lines from the chant, from the Itipiso, the qualities of the Dhamma, that it is sanditiko. So it is always here and now. So there's a way that this word sanditiko locates us. So we notice, where is the mind going? What direction is it moving in? Past or present? And that the Dhamma, when we align with Dhamma, it is here and now and timeless, akaliko, timeless, ehipassiko. And this is the word that I really want to emphasize in our practice today. Ehipassiko, pash, means to see or to inquire. So not literally seeing with one's eyes, but as a type of inner seeing or inner looking. And so that in every moment of our practice of our life, there's an opportunity to hold an open question. How is it now? To inquire into the nature of our experience and to inquire not only with this openness, but also with wisdom, noticing the changing nature of the moment, noticing that there might be a quality of unsatisfactoriness, of dukkha that's arising in the moment. Noticing the way that the mind likes to centralize around a sense of me or mine. So this word, ehipassiko, this is a quality of the Dhamma that we can align with in every moment. And then opanayiko, leading inward to the source of wisdom, to the source of intuition, to the source of compassion, to the source of a more unified consciousness. Pachatang veditabo vinyuhiti, to be experienced individually. So this is our practice together, but also we do the work ourselves individually, to be experienced individually by the wise. So with this practice of aligning with Dhamma, let's begin a period of sitting. So we'll sit for about 20 minutes together. We'll see how it goes. So really encourage you to find comfort in your body, in your posture. If you need to be supported in a different way, then please do take the time. And you might just notice as I even use this word meditation, that already you might have some faith. You might have some trust. I know you have been practicing, most of you practicing for a long time. And so there's a trust that's been cultivated over time. Noticing that when we align with how it is now, when we open to our experience, it brings freedom little by little, moment by moment. And this trust or faith is a verb. It's an application of the activity of the path. So again, gently, with kindness, seeing how it might be to allow the mind to align, to slow down to the rhythm of the body. Noticing where the breath might be felt in the body, if that's comfortable, or just noticing how the body is now. And allowing awareness to receive. Maybe just the breath in a small area of the body, below the nostrils or in the belly. Or maybe a more full-bodied, whole body breath. Maybe just a receptive, kind awareness if there's pain in the body, bringing awareness there, touching tension, pain with the power of awareness, with a gentle breath. Opanaiko. So this Dhamma, this mysterious flow of our experience, of the moment arising, is an invitation. So we can invite the mind with a short thought. How is it now? An invitation like an arrow pointing to notice sensation, feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Noticing where the mind is going. Receiving our experience here and now. Noticing where the mind goes for comfort or protection, maybe to anxiety, trusting and worry. Encouragement to trust in a deeper intuitive knowing, cultivation of wisdom. It happens when we release out of the habits of thinking, going beneath the cognitive to feel into the body, sensation, feeling, tone, allowing the breath to be an anchor or sound. Noticing how the thoughts arise and pass. You can trust in a deeper knowing. And how is it to trust in kindness and compassion towards oneself, towards others? To trust that what we need to know or understand can arise out of that ground of kindness, of unconditional compassion. So thank you all for your practice. It's so nice to sit together. So I wanted to give some thoughts, some Dharma reflections on this process, this verb, this ongoing cultivation of trust or faith. And as I said in the Dharma, the word trust, saddha, is the Pali word, or in Sanskrit it's shraddha. Some of you might be yoga practitioners, you've heard this word. It's the first of the 5 spiritual faculties, one of the frames that that trust or faith shows up in. And wherever this word saddha shows up in the Dharma, it is always balanced by wisdom. So there's a practice, there's a movement of the mind and the heart out of the habitual streams of refuge. So I know for myself, a strong refuge is worry. I put a lot of faith in worry. Like, okay, if I worry enough about this and I think it through, then it will be okay, right? Then I'll figure it out and I'll ensure that the thing doesn't happen. I'll think ahead. Or as Kitty Sorrow often says, anticipate. And notice, okay, that is one way. That is one way of placing trust in the mind. The mind is very powerful. It has this ability to project. And so often that does work very well, right? We worry enough, we anticipate, we pack the right things on the trip that we're going on, whatever it is. And yet, when we notice over time, by placing faith, whether it's worry, whether it's aversion, whether it's doubt, whether it's an inner critic, we start to develop a lot of tension in the body, a tightness of the mind. And that it's as if we're seeing the world just through a narrow opening. And we lack this broader view, this ability to see a wider view. So again, this word pash or pas, ehipassiko, to really look into, so what is the nature of reality, to see a deeper truth. And this is where wise view arises, where we're cultivating wise view, this broader view, starting to notice, okay, there is suffering. So there's this generating of a feeling of unsatisfactoriness or stress when the mind goes to refuge to a place that's not reliable, not ultimately reliable, such as worry or such as aversion or such as trying to know everything. And so we notice, there's this sense of friction that is developed. And that's often what brings us to the path. Maybe that's what brought you here this morning. It's like, a difficult week or a challenging morning. I think I'm going to show up and actually place faith or trust in a different way of knowing, and more intuitive, wiser, more aligned with how it is. And so just this act of sitting, of trusting in receiving the sensations in the body, we start to release a little bit of that tension, and that builds our trust. I'm going to come back to the body and the breath, or return to awareness, because in that moment, there's a release out of the fixity of the mind, the way that the mind fixes or grasps, tries to make things more stable, more secure, or more certain. And so that begins to open us again to wise view, this second aspect of wise view, of that actually the nature of reality is very fluid, very uncertain, but there's more of a flow to our experience. And we notice that just in the patterning of the breath, or the way that a thought actually does pass or does change, or the way that a sound ends. So we start to wake up to this wise view. And again, we notice there's a little bit more liberation, there's a little bit more freedom, or maybe even if those words are too strong, a little bit more spaciousness when we let the thought go. And that again builds saddha, it builds this faith balanced by wisdom, balanced by wise view. We start to see also the way that there's a centralization, the sense of me, the sense of a self that is driving the engine of our life. It's in the driver's seat. And that's also very tricky because there is, in reality, there is a self, there is a personality, there is a form that is moving through space and time. And yet the more that we open to the interwoven nature of reality, we start to see, oh, this whole life is a web of relationships. Then that sense of self begins to change. Maybe it doesn't dissolve, but it begins to have some holes. The net of the self, the woven structure, or the house, as the Buddha put it, of the self begins to have holes in it. And we see that we're in a relational field rather than just a centralized me and mine. And so again, little by little, we begin to have maybe a little bit more faith. And yet this challenge of faith is real. That's why a lot of people don't use that word. And then a lot of teachers do use that word. I've heard Dharma teachers call it the F word. And Sharon Salzberg wrote a book called Faith. And there's also a beautiful book called The Logic of Faith by Elizabeth Mathis Namgyal, Tibetan practitioner. And in her book, she writes about the challenge of faith and how actually faith, often even for the Western mind, can be very difficult. Because again, we've been trained to be analytical, to really think it through, to trust in the structures of our culture or society, that to trust in a deeper intuitive knowing that's rooted in our embodiment can actually be really open us to uncertainty. And so she writes, faith will challenge you. It's not so comfortable. It carries with it the undeniable tension between your search for security and the limits of your ability to know. So I'm just going to say that again. Faith will challenge you. It's not so comfortable. It carries with it the undeniable tension between your search for security and the limits of your ability to know. Faith keeps your spiritual quest relevant and connected to the heart of the human predicament. Faith keeps your spiritual quest relevant and connected to the heart of the human predicament. And so she's speaking to many things here, but one of the things I feel that she's speaking to is sometimes we go into practice to try to gain certainty. So we study the Dharma. It's like we're in a difficult place and we study the Dharma and we try to adopt the teachings as a way to solidify or concretize. Like, okay, this is what is said. This is how it is. This is the right way to practice. This is the right method. And we start to centralize around that. And this may not be conscious, but this can be a movement of the mind and the heart to really try to fix ourselves. If I can do the practice enough for long enough, and if I do it right, then I can get out of the suffering. I can get away from the suffering. I can transcend the suffering, the uncertainty, the stickiness, the messiness of life. And then the more that we practice, the more that we place our faith actually in opening to the just awareness itself, to receiving the moment just as it is, to trusting in our embodied knowing, to trusting this into the compassionate heart, that instead of trying to push ourselves or strive or to fix or to wisen up, we begin to trust in a compassionate, knowing heart. That's really what these practices of Kuan Yin are all about. This Kuan Yin Dharma is that we trust in our own awakened heart, our own awakened mind heart that is deeply interconnected into something that is more mysterious actually than just thinking it through, or than mindfulness, something that is deeply interwoven, that is ancient, and that we can actually touch into in every moment. That's Dhamma, that's taking refuge in Dhamma, that we can touch for ourselves. So ehipasiko, opanayiko, akaliko, timeless, something that is always here and now, sanditiko, always arising here and now, that when we release the thought, when we release the judgment, when we release the pusher, the striver, the planner, that we tap into, that we open to. And again, this is balanced by wisdom. How is it now? What is the nature of this experience? So the Buddha spoke to this way that it's difficult in the human life to trust, this challenge to trust in how it is, the way that we try to get out of how it is, the way that we go to refuge, the way that we go to refuge in trying to be better than, or into addiction. These are all very human, so it's not to criticize ourselves, but just to notice this pattern. What is your pattern? I said my pattern is worry. You have your own. And so in the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, really offered the triple jewel and the 5 precepts. So the sila training and the triple jewel for reliable and wholesome places to cultivate trust. Trust that is taking refuge in present moment awareness, that is illuminates the way things are, that develops prajna, or wisdom. And so in the Dhammapada, it is said, they go to many a refuge. They go to many a refuge, to mountains and forests, to parks and tree shrines, people threatened with danger. That's not the secure refuge, not the supreme refuge. That's not the refuge, having gone to which you regain release from suffering and stress. But when, having gone to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha for refuge, you see with right discernment, you see with wise view, the 4 noble truths, suffering, the cause, the cessation, and the way out of suffering. That's the secure refuge. That is the supreme refuge. That is the refuge having gone to which you gain release from suffering and stress. So what about faith? Many of us, I was just on retreat and actually there was a question about blind faith. Because in this practice we chant, we honor the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, especially Kuan Yin Bodhisattva. We spend a lot of time really honoring this responsive, this mysteriously responsive energy or embodiment of compassion that is Kuan Yin, that is Avalokiteshvara, many different names. And so this concern about, what about blind faith? Here I am chanting and doing these practices, maybe bowing, maybe practicing the great compassion mantra. What about blind faith? So blind faith is a fixed idea. Again, someone telling us or us telling ourselves that it has to be this way. It can only be this way. Something, a teaching or a way of being that shuts down investigation, that doesn't open us to how is it now. And that also always relies on an outside source for verification. So we're always looking to someone else. Oh, how is it now? Well, what do they say? How is it now? What should I do? What do they say? Right? And the practice of the Dhamma is that it always is opening us, again, to awaken to our own deepest experience. That's a teaching from the book Faith by Sharon Salzberg. She says, faith is about awakening to our own deepest experience. So again, that is why the Buddha said, come and see, ehipassiko, come and see for yourself. Look into the nature of reality, not just once, but again and again and again, so that this practice becomes an open question. It's why I love the practice of how is it now? That's called vitakka. It's a question that invites the mind, the thinking mind, to open to a larger place of trust, to open to a deeper intuitive wisdom that arises out of this inner looking, this inner noticing. So how is it now? And then the vichara is to receive. So we don't just keep, how is it now? How is it now? How is it now? We receive. We take several moments, however long it takes, to again release the drive of the mind to know, to get it, to see it, to notice, to get somewhere. Vichara is that we slow down. We allow for a gap or a space between the thought, between the next thing. We sense, okay, what's arising in the body? What are the sounds? What is the patterns of reactivity? Maybe there's a hindrance there, maybe aversion or anxiety. What's the deeper ground in which that hindrance is arising? The patterning of the heart, the sensation pattern in the body. So that's receiving our experience in awareness. And so I think we can open to this practice of saddha, of trust or faith, even just with that one question, dropping it in with kindness, with compassion. How is it now? What is happening now? Realigning with how it is. And trusting that the response and the way are intertwined inconceivably. It's what we chant in the Great Compassion Ceremony, that the response that is needed will arise from this deeper knowing, this deeper trust. So I'd like to close again by chanting the same chant, Itipiso, recollection of the triple jewel. And then we'll close with Om Mani Padme Hum. So again, I'll share my screen so you can see the words. Recollection of the triple jewel on page 4. And I know some of you are new to the chanting. Just listen, receive the sounds. These are ancient sounds. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manusanam buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjupati Panno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Nayapati Panno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Samichi Patipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidang Chattari Purisa Yugania Tapurisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahunayo Pahunayo Dakinayo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang punya ketang lokasati. And the heart mantra of Kuan Yin on page 3. So Om Mani Padme Hum, the 5th mantra down. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 So may the benefit of our practice together radiate out in all directions, omitting none. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings experience ease and peace in their minds and hearts. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And I'm just going to put, if you wish to make a donation for this practice today to Sacred Mountain Sangha, these teachings are given freely. And so there's no obligation, but we do appreciate it. And those donations are shared with all of the teachers who teach on these Sunday morning Sangha gatherings. And we formally close here, but I do want to invite you, if you wish to stay and have some time to connect and to discuss the Dharma, there's an opportunity now. So the Buddha really spoke about the power not only of practicing the Dhamma, hearing the Dhamma, but discussing the Dhamma. So please feel free to stay. And the prompt for our time together in the sharing is, what is your relationship to trust or to faith? And this could also be, where do you notice that your mind or your heart goes for refuge, for protection, for comfort?